If you have been through a divorce, especially if you were the one who initiated the separation, there is a question that haunts you long after the papers are signed. What happens to her? You divide the assets, you divide the days with the kids, but you can't divide the history. You leave behind a woman you built a life with, and you worry about the wreckage. Today, I want to tell you the story of Sarah, my ex-wife, and what truly happens when a woman has to rebuild her entire world alone. It's a story of pain, but more importantly, it's a story of spectacular, unexpected ascension. When I walked out of our shared house for the last time, I looked back and saw a woman who seemed physically diminished. Sarah was heartbroken, furious, and deeply wounded by the end of our 15 years together. I told myself she was going to be fine, that she was strong. But the reality is, the immediate aftermath of divorce, especially for the person left behind, is a period of total, devastating deconstruction. For the first 6 months, everything she had defined herself by was gone. She was no longer Mrs. Mark or just a part of a couple. She was alone in a house that felt too large, surrounded by relics of a life that no longer existed. She didn't just lose a husband, she lost her identity, her social circle as she knew it, and the fundamental sense of certainty about her future. I heard through friends that she barely left the house. She was exhausted, not just from the crying and the legal battles, but from the sheer mental effort required to function when your soul is fractured. This is the hardest truth. Divorce doesn't just end a relationship, it forces a woman to confront the profound question of who she is when she is standing entirely alone. She hit a point, about 8 months in, where she realized she had a choice. She could remain the victim of her circumstances, or she could become the architect of her future. This wasn't a sudden, dramatic change. It was a slow, agonizing pivot that started with tiny, courageous steps. I saw the beginning of the shift in small ways. She started going to therapy, not to process the pain of losing me, but to excavate the self she had buried under years of compromise and routine. She changed the lighting in the kitchen, a completely unnecessary, small thing, but it signaled that she was taking ownership of her space, making it hers, not ours. She started a fierce, quiet campaign of self-reclamation. The true transformation began when she stopped focusing on what I had taken and started focusing on what I had inadvertently liberated. Sarah had always loved gardening, but I hated the dirt. Now, she gutted the backyard and created a greenhouse. She had always wanted to go back to school to get a specialization, but we had always prioritized my career. Now, she enrolled, tackling classes with a ferocious, newfound intellectual energy. She stopped answering to the label of ex-wife and started answering to the label of student, creator, and independent woman. The woman who emerged from the wreckage was not the person I married, and she certainly wasn't the broken person I left. She was someone unfamiliar, sharper, and far more radiant. The most profound moment for me came about 1.5 years after the divorce was finalized. We met briefly at a neutral location to sign some final documents. I was expecting the usual tense, cautious exchange. But when she walked in, I was stunned. She was polished, poised, and she carried a completely new gravity. She looked directly at me, her eyes clear, no lingering bitterness, no resentment. She talked about her new projects, her travel plans, and her children with an enthusiasm that was utterly authentic. I realized she wasn't performing strength. She was genuinely thriving. She had built a life so rich, so full of her own passions and priorities, that my presence, or lack thereof, was simply irrelevant. I was a character from an old novel she had finished reading. I saw the devastating, beautiful truth. The destruction of our marriage became the catalyst for her creation. The pain she suffered didn't ruin her. It stripped away the layers of comfortable mediocrity, revealing the powerful, resilient woman she was always meant to be. I, the person who was supposed to be her anchor, was actually the weight holding her down. So, if you ask what happens to your wife after divorce, I can tell you my truth. She doesn't just survive. She has the opportunity to transcend. She reclaims her time, she redefines her purpose, and she builds a life where her happiness is determined solely by her own choices, not by the stability of a partnership. She finds her peace, and that, gentlemen, is the ultimate reality check. The woman you leave behind often becomes the best version of herself. It's a loss for you, but it's a profound victory for her. If this story resonated with you, if you've been on either side of this coin, hit the like button and tell me in the comments, what was the first thing you did to reclaim your life after a major breakup or divorce? Don't forget to subscribe.